I met my partner at the rest home. We were sharing a bathroom and neighbours, and we escaped from that rest home. We
That is,
just up stakes and just left.
I think that's the best story.
Oh, much healthier lifestyle. You know, we've got our own vegetable garden, eating nutritious food, accessing a lot of rescue food, which is picked up from the supermarkets and food outlets, and that's made available at no cost.
Healthy as well, Sheldon. I mean, like you look really good, and I'm so happy to see that you and her being so happy, to be honest. I just want to say thank you so much, Sheldon. Uh, I have known you for a long time. Do you remember how long ago was it?
Oh, probably 15 to 20 years ago, I would say.
Yeah, about 2006 and 7 when I was still with Mental Health Foundation.
Yeah, I wasn't always the best behaved at the Mental Health Foundation.
Neither do I. So that's the fun bit. Like, and I also really want to say we kind of lost context a while, and I'm really grateful that I can talk to you again because I think you have done some amazing work even during that time, which is pioneering the Take It From Us radio show.
Hmm.
Would you like to introduce yourself so people get to know who you are, a bit of your background?
I find this actually quite challenging. I mean, I've had a life of highs and lows, some fairly deep lows, and maybe not so many high highs. And that might suggest that I'm sort of bordering on being bipolar. And there was a psychiatrist, apparently, way back, who told my wife at the time that I was bipolar, but he never bothered to tell me. So I thought, and she didn't reveal to me until sometime later, almost sort of brandishing this diagnosis in front of me. And I was absolutely amazed because I had no hint of that at all. So, I mean, I grew up in a house on Scarborough Hill in Sumner. The steps, there were about 100 steps up to the property I lived in with my parents, and it was almost like straight up the cliff.
Wow.
And that had a benefit in that I used to have mates that would try and beat me up the steps, and I guess I'd always I've been walking up them twice, three times a day. So I had a bit of an advantage and used to get up to the house a bit quicker than they did. But there was a downside on these steps in that my mother was seriously mentally unwell and I had no insights into this at all. And I guess I was quite young, but it turned out that she had to visit a hospital in Christchurch every Friday, and sometimes she resisted going to this hospital. My father and I had to help her down the stairs, and it was a bit of a fight. And I was probably in my be or 12, maybe 13. We were walking down these stairs in front of neighbours, although we weren't necessarily knew that the neighbours were watching. And then we'd get down onto a public path and had to walk down to where my father's car was parked on the road on the hill. And sometimes we had to call an ambulance, but at no stage did I get any insights at all from my father as to what was going on. And then very often my mother wouldn't return and I would be told that she'd gone into Sunnyside Hospital, which is now Templeton Hospital in Christchurch, and I was kind of required to visit there. And Sunnyside was one of those old-fashioned, a bit like Kingseed, Carrington, horrible places, lines of people, elderly people and not so old, sitting, sort of looking as though they were mesmerized, medicated, And I would walk into this sort of environment, and it was really, really confusing.
Yeah. Wow.
And I think the only thing that my father said to me was, "Oh, just because your mother has a mental illness, it doesn't mean to say that you will have one." But the confusion about my mother, who was a very sensitive woman, loved gardening, composting, always came back from a trip away with the family, and she'd have pine cones, and she'd have seaweed, and she'd have compost to put on the compost, and we had to carry all this up these steep steps. So it was no wonder that I got reasonably fit.
And tall.
Well, yes, well, I don't know whether I can attribute these steps to my tallness, but certainly I was much taller than my parents. But the significance of those steps is quite marked, and I guess not knowing anything about my mother's illness really undermined me. It knocked my confidence. I didn't really have any um, reinforcement or empowerment from my mother. She just didn't feel confident, I don't think, to be able to compliment me. My father was a bit of an angry man, and he had a shit list of people who he'd sort of written off because they hadn't treated him properly. And I was an only child as
Mm,
well, and so fairly dependent
mm,
on parents and feedback from parents.
yeah.
I mean, one of the real pluses was that I grew up in Sumner, which was where the Scarborough Hill was, and it was a wonderful community. And
Mm.
I became associated with quite a number of families who had 4 or 5 children or
So,
6 children.
sorry, so that would be which part of the city in...
Sumner's out east,
Okay.
right on the beach. It's become a very ritzy and rich suburb, but it was also very hardly hit
Okay.
very hard by the earthquakes.
Oh,
And
wow.
parts of the cliffs around Scarborough Hill, there were about 30 metres of the cliff just fell into the
Wow.
sea. It's been a place where it's taken a long time to
Yeah.
come right, and parts of the hills have not been able to be built on. So,
Yeah.
yeah, there's
Wow.
been quite a bit of trauma there.
Can I say, like even at that age, actually means that you're taking on quite a bit of responsibility to help your father to nurture your mom in some ways. I mean, you kind of don't really have a choice to be put in those situations. Um,
No, well, I mean, it was a smallish house
mm,
with a beautiful view, but, I was very conscious of times when my mother wasn't well, and on those Friday mornings, she wouldn't get dressed. She would sort of prance up and down in the kitchen and lounge, smoking and not looking as though she was going to cooperate. And so
wow.
there was that intense sort of confusion about what was happening, and I felt very sensitive to having to, I guess I've used the word manhandle with my father down these steps,
Mm,
which were pretty steep. They were
mm,
stone steps, and it was not easy.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the most traumatic experience with having to go when I had my own license and I could drive to Sunnyside Hospital was to enter that place and, see this sensitive woman um, sort of in this environment. Yes.
Can I ask you, it sounds like also what that means is you also have to look after yourself.
Well, it was quite a lonely existence because the location of this house was that you didn't have people just dropping in,
No.
mates dropping in. And so you tend to be, I'd get home on my own and I'd look out a big sort of viewing window that we had there, and I was looking down to see the car that was very recognizable, and hoping that my parents would get back home.
Mm,
And I suppose there was always that doubt that my mother was not going to be present.
Mm,
Yeah, so I think the two parents were very different people. My father was, yeah, a bit angry and a bit of a control freak, and my mother was very sensitive and loved her gardening and those sorts of things. But, we did have some lovely family holidays. I was able to take mates away with me, one or two mates. We had a caravan, and it was, yeah, we went and explored on the west coast of the South Island all round. So, I mean, it wasn't all
yeah.
negative, and because of the lovely community in Sumner, I got dragged in to play rugby and go to weigh-ins for the five stoners, and we all got into surfing and, I've got mates that I'm still in touch with now. Well, we started school at the age of 5 at Sumner School. So, that sort of cushioned the loneliness of being up on this hill where nobody sort of visited.
And to be honest, it's the first time I hear you share your story with me, and that's really explain the kind of like your personality. There's a softness of you, empathetic of Sheldon, but there also that toughness of Sheldon that I seen hold that two space very well. I have to say, because you are a very genuine individual. By hearing what you just described, even though you say there's some happiness in your teenager life because you have friends that you can rely on. And as you say, when you grow up, you were supposed to be having parents, especially your mom, as a nurturing caretaker, especially at the time of the society, but she's not really present.
And there was no explanation really.
Yeah,
Um, I think my father was sort of reluctant to address the issue.
yes,
He was pretty reluctant to address any issues. And I guess he looked at me and he thought, well, he's doing fine, he's tall,
yeah,
he's playing sport, he's playing
yes.
rugby, he's doing pretty well at school, he's going to university, he's
Mm,
graduating
mm,
with a postgraduate diploma in journalism, and
mm, mm.
and so I think that he almost felt a bit envious because he grew up in England and came out before the Second World War, and he was treated very, very badly in New Zealand as a conscientious objector. And he always felt, I think, pretty sore about that.
Especially at the time, mental health is not talked about, and no one will even understand what it is to be able to excel. Like they're doing so well academically, and being in the journalism is not easy field too. It's hard to get into. You have to be bloody good to get into the degree. Yeah, and graduate from it.
Well, I was actually, I had a couple of months up in Gisborne surfing up there after I had graduated my Bachelor of Arts, and I was sort of waiting to see whether I would be accepted for the journalism school, and they sent me an assignment where I had to be a reporter at a Shakespearean play, and I was out surfing. I was cutting timber out of the Manuka forests, and I was working on the wharf down there and having a pretty good time. And I thought, oh well, nah, just flag this. And there was a guy in Gisborne who wanted me to join him to go to Australia to surf over there, and so I just flagged it away. But anyway, I was accepted because of my grades during the 4 years that I'd done a BA. So I did get into this journalism school, but it was the lecturer was a Welshman, and he really didn't have too much idea about what was required, and the things that really were needed was to be able to do your reporting, to have some shorthand ability so that you could take notes, and, to be able to use the phone and drive a car. And he had us writing editorials and doing all sorts of other assignments which were of no use in the daily grind of journalism.
I like the fact that you mentioned about shorthand, because I don't think many young people know what this shorthand is, because now you have gadgets where you can record even with your mobile phones. At your
Yeah.
time, you had to learn how to do the shorthand writing just because people were speaking.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I mean, young people these days have developed their own shorthand, haven't they, on social media, and
Yeah.
some of it is almost unreadable.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
This was a shorthand that, there was one system which was very, very complicated, and another one which I adopted, which was somewhat simpler. And I guess I still use that when I moved into public relations work.
So how long?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that I did end up having my own history of mental health, and became. It was no surprise really that I got to work in mental health, and I had a stroke of luck in that I was doing some bone carving at Framework Trust, which has now become Ember. And there was a woman who came in very, very well dressed, and I just got talking to her, and she turned out to be the chief executive of Framework. And I said, well, what are you doing about marketing? And she said, well, nothing, but we would like to do something about marketing and promotions. And I said, well, I may be able to help you. And she encouraged me to send in an application, and I got the job quite quickly. Yeah, that was, it was, I think, meant to happen. And, I went on to host the mental health radio show, Take It From Us, which, as you know, and you were part of the Like Minds, Like Mind campaign, which was to address stigma and discrimination and all those things that I guess, become an advocate to try and discourage those very things of stigma and discrimination.
And it's still running. It's still going. Tell me more, like how it all started.
Well, the woman that was hosting it, she got very unwell very quickly.
Mm.
And I guess I was asked to just step in. And I'd never done any broadcasting despite being in journalism. I'm actually working for the BBC in Norwich, in East Anglia, but they wouldn't let me do any audio work because of my accent, my Kiwi accent. They were
Ah,
very proper over there.
yes.
So I had to step in. And the first person that I interviewed was a very well known person who was also a guitarist, but he heard voices. And I think his name was Aaron something.
I know
Yeah,
Aaron Pearson.
Pearson. Yes, yes. And I had never heard of people hearing voices, even though I'd had a few spells in different hospitals and that sort of thing. And so I had to tread very carefully. But I think the interview went well. And Aaron played a couple of songs, and we got through that first interview on Take It From Us.
Because it's quite symbolic to many people who know about the show. I mean, including myself. Symbolic in the sense that like, it's good to see the show still running. And how many shows you did altogether? You told me over the phone.
Yeah, no, well, I did just over 1,300 shows
Yeah,
over a period of about 13 years.
yeah,
And
wow.
we won a couple of New Zealand radio awards. And I think we had in the Planet FM awards every year, we had 9 consecutive awards that we won. Yeah, it gained its own momentum. And yeah, I've been listening actually to Mike Hosking on News Talk ZB, and
Mm.
I wish I'd done that earlier because I might have picked up a few other ideas to have adopted was Take It From Us. But yeah, it was a really fascinating time, and it gave me the opportunity to talk to a lot of people in mental health and to confront perhaps the Minister of Health on occasions and the Minister of Mental Health later on, and also the Director of Mental Health.
Wow.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's significant. It was really significant because at the time there's no radio show were able to talk to people who experience mental health issues. And so that was a big thing as people can share their background story and also how they were treated and put the human elements into individual experience instead of just the diagnosis.
Yeah, well, I think having my own lived experience meant that I could be very empathetic with those people who were going through depression and anxiety, or other mental health issues, loneliness, um, and I guess poverty as well. So I think it was a value to have that experience.
And on top of that, I don't know whether you remember or not, Sheldon, you actually provide training for like minds people, including me, about how to talk to media. You know, like that is how I learned how to talk to media.
Yeah, well, I did speak at Like Minds conferences, I think, to do with dealing with the media, and it's fraught with all sorts of challenges. I think dealing with the media, and some people are a bit, they're challenged by it, but they also don't quite understand that there's got to be a mutual respect between the media and the people like. Mental health people who are trying to get their point across.
Because it's especially during that time as a Like Minds project worker, we do deal with media. You teach, be mindful about what to answer, what not to say, and prepare us to be able to share our narrative that is empowered to us, but not being taken out of context. I still use it when I have the chance to talk to media, so that was really impactful.
Well, you're working in a sort of media role right here and now, and I think you're a very good facilitator.
But I want to go back to you started with how when you were being diagnosed, but yet you're not being fully disclosed about what you're experiencing. And that's through your first wife, and why it wasn't being shared about.
Well, I don't believe that I demonstrated the sorts of bipolar symptoms.
I agree.
And I think that the lows, I was always very fearful if I thought that I was going down into a dark hole
Yeah.
again, probably caused the entry into the dark hole, because of my fear of hoping that nothing was going to happen.
Mm.
So the downs were probably as dark as most people would experience, and they did cause me to have to go into hospital. The highs weren't anywhere. I don't think they were like I hear people talking about bipolar highs. They're up all night, they're partying, they're spending money that they don't have, they're doing,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
extreme things, and I'm too conservative to do any of those things.
I'm surprised just now when you mentioned it because that's not how I see it too. Because you like what you say, I also have friends who have bipolar, and usually the high is to a point where they experience a very different persona where they, like doing things that are a bit outrageous to a detriment of their later on how they had to unpack all that. And I know, yeah, so I know where you're coming from as well. And especially to mentions about your experience with your mom, it makes a lot of sense why you would have, experienced depression because when as a teenager or boy, care was supposed to be given to you. Instead, you are taking care and taking on that kind of responsibility that at the time talking therapy is not even available to process those emotions and feelings. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I tried to safeguard myself against depression and anxiety by
Mm,
playing a lot of sport, and I got a great deal of satisfaction out of that. I played at a reasonable level in rugby and squash. I played a lot of tennis. But I also adopted breathing exercises, Tai Chi. I went to regular yoga on the North Shore for a period of time and actually had a yoga therapist who was a huge help to me. And so, I think that I'm a strong believer, and if we can find those alternative supportive activities rather than depend so strongly on medication. And I think that mental health has got a big job to do
Mm.
in encouraging people to look at alternatives rather than just depending on the sleeping tablets and the antidepressants. And, I guess my experience with mental health services for older people was, yes, they did provide sociologists, psychologists as an alternative to medication. But
Mm.
when the rubber hit the road and there was no improvement, it was an increase in medication that was always recommended.
I'm so with you on that because the same thing, like I have to do so much more things to keep my own mental health intact. It's not just medication. I took medication as well. And that only has such a small impact on my overall mental health. And when I even go to GP, the only thing they can do is just up my medication. This is nothing else for me. And would you like to share a little bit about your life in Waiheke Island? I mean, like that catch up just last week, and I thought what you're doing is just incredible because it is really like what you talk about the holistic of community connections and also how to cultivate the sense of self even at your golden age. Can I say that?
Yes. Well, I need to go back to mental health services for older people, and they were helpful, and they were gave me quite a lot of time. But as an alternative to hospital, they suggested going to a rest home. And it became quite clear to me that while they were making these recommendations, I don't think they'd ever visited these rest homes. And so I was taken by a friend to a couple. One was absolutely hideous. The second one had a lovely exterior appearance, lovely gardens and that sort of thing. And I opted to go there. It was a pretty horrific experience in the end. I had also been diagnosed with prostate cancer when I first went in there. So I was walking from the Mount Eden rest home to what was, it's now Alivia. It was
Mm.
Mercy Hospital where I was getting radiation, and I had to have 20 consecutive radiation treatments for this prostate cancer. And on one occasion, I returned to my room to find that there was a builder in the middle of the room building a closet, and he had cut a huge part of the wall out, which left an open hole into a staff toilet.
Oh my God.
Uh, and I'd come back from radiation hoping that I could get feet up, and this was the reality. And when I confronted the owner and manager, she just didn't want to know. Um,
Triple, yeah.
yeah, so, there were many things in terms of the food, the lack of nutritional value, the lack of any alternative healthy foods. You had to supplement, healthy food at your own cost. And the cost was $1,500 a week for me because,
Lots.
I had sufficient income to not qualify for any government assistance. So, at $1,500 a week, $3,000 a fortnight, it wasn't particularly caring or nutritious. And, the lack of formal exercise, it was just appalling.
That is about $200 per day. It's a
Right.
lot.
Yeah, well, I think there's a huge number of people that are deposited or dumped in these rest homes, and many of them have serious Alzheimer's, serious dementia. And one of the revelations to me was that many of these people are in their mid 50s and early 60s
Still
and
very
very young. And they have lost a great deal of their ability to articulate. They can still go for walks and exercise, but in terms of their communication skills, they are really compromised. So they could be facing a life of 20 to 30 years
Wow.
in that environment
Wow.
where the rooms are 4 meters by 3 meters and you have a shared bathroom, so it's not, it's
Yeah.
in no way. I mean, this is a major mental health issue on its own.
Wow. And so hidden as well because it's not necessarily accessible to public unless someone have a close family in those situations. Otherwise, like people like me, I wouldn't even see it, isn't it?
Well, I read a story about Monty Beethams. He was a rugby league player and boxer, and his father is in a rest home, and the daughter has had all sorts of problems with Mr. Beetham Senior. And it just reminded me of the experiences that we had. And I have to say that I met my partner at the rest home. We were sharing a bathroom and neighbours, and we escaped from that rest home. We
That is
just
it.
up stakes and just left.
I think that's the best story.
Oh, much healthier lifestyle. We've got our own vegetable garden, eating nutritious food, accessing a lot of rescue food, which is picked up from the supermarkets and food outlets, and that's made available uh, at no cost.
Healthy as well, Sheldon. I mean, like you look really good, and I'm so happy to see that you and her being so happy. To be honest,
Right. Yeah. Well, it was a risky escape, if you like, but I think it's worked out very well.
what you're saying is this: those places are not really good for human conditions, and also the other thing is there's no quality of life because they were just confined in places where they are looked after, but yet there's no such a thing as like compared to what you have now to what you have then is such a mild difference, isn't it?
Yeah, a huge difference. And also, the staff are immigrants who speak very little English,
Mm,
and they're not really able to respond to any emergencies, and they're not even able to respond to the need for care. And that they're actually unable to even take blood pressures. And as a result of doing it inefficiently and not accurately, you get blood pressure counts that worry the hell out of
yeah.
because
Yes.
they're not doing it properly. And so you get, it's 170 over 98. And I mean, that's a
Yeah.
very good way to take you down because you're worried about
Yes.
your blood pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So, would you like to share? I mean, like, because now you're able to not just live in the space you enjoy, but also contribute quite significantly to the community itself. Like, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have two or three friends that we've met, some with disabilities, and we're looking out for them. It's a really great caring community. But on the other hand, there are, I think, a lot of people who are very close to homelessness. There is a shortage of, social housing on this island.
Mm,
A lot of the accommodation is taken up by Airbnb, and the rich people are really not all that evident. You see them with
yes.
their Range Rovers and their Defender Land Rovers and that sort of thing, but they're just passing through Onirawa, and then they disappear.
Mm,
So I think there's a lot of need on Waiheke,
mm,
and there's a lot of talk about how the amount of rates is about 30 million from this island, and only about 7 of that amount is actually spent on the island. It's 30
that's
million.
it's a lot of money.
Well, there's about 9,000 people living here.
Yeah.
I guess some of the richer people are paying
Yes.
very large rates bills on large properties.
Yeah.
and lots of land. So, they say the rates take is 30 million and only seven of
Seven.
it.
Yeah, there's a shocker there, isn't it? Even without knowing now knew how council is spending money on anyway. So another issue.
Exactly. I don't think we want to go down that track.
What would you say to the younger Sheldon if there's a chance?
Well, we went to a stress toolkit actually quite early on and after our arrival here.
Mm.
And we were given a little saying, which is just focus on your left arm or your right arm and just say that it is comfortably heavy.
Ah,
And I do this at night time and it puts me back to sleep. And, I'm no longer on any sleep medication, which is just such a benefit. And using this little saying has been
how do
so
you do
that,
it?
well, I just my left arm is comfortably heavy,
Yeah.
and just repeat it. My left arm is comfortably heavy,
Yes.
and it is very, very effective.
Yeah.
It's easily better than deep breathing or counting the breath and that sort of thing. Just quietly say, my left arm or my right arm is comfortably heavy. And inevitably, I will go back to sleep.
Oh, that is such a good tips because I know a lot of people have problems sleeping at night. I'm very fortunate. I never have, like the haze and that's it. But I know people who struggle with sleeping problems to really appreciate tips too.
Yeah, take that one away.
And is there any questions that I haven't asked? If you have a chance, you will ask yourself.
No, I think you've been a wonderful facilitator, Ivan. I think you've got potential for facilitating and listening. That's the comment that I would make is that people that work in mental health need to have intense listening skills. And my experience is that unfortunately, there are many people working in mental health that have no idea about listening. And you practice it very, very professionally. And I think it makes all the difference to encouraging people to speak up because they have that compliment. The person is paying a compliment of listening and respecting what they're saying without interrupting.
Thank you, Sheldon. You have no idea what this mean coming from you. The fact is because you have done so many radio shows and the reason why I take it from us still here till this day was due to your hard work. Otherwise it wouldn't have been and still flourishing. But I am just very pleased to reconnect with you again and seeing that you're enjoying your life. I always see you like a big teddy bear, like from outside you look very tough and all that. Inside you just, like genuine, caring individual and yeah, and really
Yeah,
want to
well,
make a difference.
and Waiheke has the potential to be able to look out for others and keep in touch with others and connect. And one of the five qualities that the Mental Health Foundation encourages is connecting.
Yeah. And for some reason, I believe, I will come back and talk to you again with other topics because I found there's a lot more we can unpack, especially with older person mental health. I think there's something that we really need to talk about as well.
Yeah. Well, I guess I've got the cancer challenge as well, and
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
the melanoma, which has caught up with me as a result of spending so much time surfing and playing tennis and playing golf.
Ah, yeah.
But I've been very lucky in that I have been granted by Pharmac a wonder drug for addressing melanoma.
I'm very pleased to hear it as well because you looking very healthy. And now I don't know, of course, the full extent of it, but I'm just really pleased to see that you enjoy your life because I know from what you share, and also from like knowing you, the whole journey has not been easy. You are a real testimony of resilience and
Well, I wrote down here, there's no gains without pain. There's no gain without pain. And, I think that we can mature from the pain that we experience. Yeah,
I'm I'm I'm
probably
just
probably a good time to end on that
I
note.
agree.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank
yeah.
thank you
Thank,
so much, Sheldon.
yeah. Thank you.